Captain Park Minho was having what he liked to call a Tuesday kind of day, which meant absolutely nothing was going according to plan. He sat in his captain's chair aboard the human exploration vessel that bore the rather suspicious name Asterisk Definitely, not a warship Asterisk. Sipping his morning coffee and wondering why the universe seemed determined to make his life complicated, the ship's communication officer, Kim Sora, suddenly perked up at her station. "Captain, we're getting a distress signal." From the Fluffington system, she paused, looking confused. Though I have to say, that's either the cutest or most ridiculous star system name I've ever heard. Park nearly choked on his coffee. Fluffington. Seriously? Apparently someone with a sense of humor, replied Engineer Lee Ji-ho from his position near the engine monitors, or someone who really likes stuffed animals. The distress signal crackled through the ship's speakers, having been run through the universal translator 17 times. To account for various galactic languages, the final message that emerged was both urgent and oddly specific. Help. Terrible Deathworlders, destroying everything. Send heroes. Park raised an eyebrow. Deathworlders. Are they talking about us? He looked around at his crew, who were currently engaged in various mundane activities. Pilot Choi Haeon was eating a sandwich. Medical Officer Han Nari was reading a romance novel. And Security Chief Yoon Dae-ho was trying to untangle his headphone wires. They looked about as threatening as a group of office workers on their lunch break. I mean, technically, Earth is classified as a death world, Sora pointed out. But all that gravity, weather, and those terrifying Australian spiders that the other species keep hearing about. Fair point, Park admitted. A set course for the Fluffington system. If someone's calling for help against Deathworlders, we're apparently the local Deathworlders, we should probably go see what's happening. What the humans didn't know was that their universal translator had performed what could only be described as the most spectacular translation failure in galactic history. The message wasn't about humans at all. The adorable, fuzzy alien species called the Quilnari were actually being terrorized by genuine nightmare creatures from the void of space. And they were desperately hoping someone would come save them. The Quilnari looked exactly like what would happen if someone crossed a teddy bear with a cotton ball and then gave it the ability to speak. They were roughly 3 feet tall, covered in soft, colorful fur, and had large, expressive eyes that seemed to perpetually glisten with unshed tears. Their entire civilization was built around concepts of kindness, comfort, and making sure everyone had enough cookies. When the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace near their planet, the Quilnari Emergency Council was in the middle of their daily panic session. Elder Fluffsworth, whose purple fur had gone white with stress, was pacing back and forth in front of a holographic display showing the approaching human ships. The ancient prophecies spoke of heroes coming from the stars. He squeaked in his tiny voice. Pale beings who would emerge from metal fortresses to save us from the darkness. The other Quilnari nodded enthusiastically, their fur rippling with excitement and hope. They had been waiting for these prophesied heroes for generations, and now finally their salvation had arrived. Meanwhile, aboard the definitely not a warship, Captain Park was studying the readings from the planet below. Well, this is interesting. The planet seems to be inhabited by what appear to be living stuffed animals. Cute living stuffed animals, Nari corrected, looking at the visual feed. Oh my goodness, they're adorable. Look at their little faces. And they're apparently terrified of us, Heian added, watching as crowds of Quilnari gathered in their cities. Pointing at the human ships with what looked like a mixture of awe and excitement, Park scratched his head. This is weird. If they called us here to help with Deathworlders, why do they look so happy to see us? Shouldn't they be, running away screaming? Maybe they're just really polite, Jiho suggested. Some species have cultural requirements to greet everyone, cheerfully, even if they're about to be conquered. Or maybe, Sora said slowly, there's been some kind of translation error. But before they could figure out what was going on, Park decided to open communications. He figured the best approach was to be diplomatic, even if the situation was confusing. The last thing he wanted was to accidentally start an interstellar incident because of a misunderstanding. Greetings, inhabitants of the Fluffington system, he began, trying to sound official and non-threatening. Then he paused, looking at the fuzzy creatures on the screen. They were so ridiculously cute that he couldn't help but smile. Greetings. Terrified, fluffballs. The word just slipped out. There was really no other way to describe them. We are here to respond to your distress call about Deathworlders, Park continued, still trying to figure out what was expected of him. The Quilnari seemed to be hanging on his every word, their large eyes growing even wider. We are here too. Definitely not destroy your planet. The moment those words left his mouth, something magical happened. Every single Quilnari within hearing distance burst into tears of pure joy. Not sad tears, but the kind of overwhelming, happy tears that happen when someone's deepest wishes finally come true. They admit it, Elder Fluffsworth cried out, his voice squeaking with excitement. They admit they're capable of destruction, but they choose not to. These are truly the honest heroes of legend. The Quilnari had spent so long dealing with politicians and smooth-talking traitors who always promised one thing and delivered another. Finally, here were beings who were upfront about their capabilities, but chose to use them for good instead of evil. It was exactly what their ancient prophecies had described. Park looked around at his crew, completely baffled by the enthusiastic response. Did we just accidentally become heroes by promising not to blow up their planet? I think so. Sora replied, equally confused. And honestly, that might be the most human way to become heroes ever. Little did they know that their real adventure was just beginning, and that the universe was about to discover why humans were simultaneously the most terrifying and most helpful species in the galaxy. 3 hours after their confusing but apparently successful first contact, Captain Park was beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, this mission might actually go smoothly for once. He should have known better. The universe had a strict policy against giving Park Min-ho easy days. The trouble started when Elder Fluffsworth and his delegation beamed aboard the Definitely Not a Warship for what they called an urgent hero briefing session. The Quilnari looked even more adorable up close, if that was possible. They waddled around the ship's corridors in their colorful fur coats, making excited, chittering sounds, and occasionally stopping to hug each other for emotional support. Okay, Park said. Settling into the conference room with his senior officers, let's figure out what's actually going on here. Elder Fluffsworth stood on the table to address the humans properly, his purple fur practically glowing with urgency. When he spoke, his words came out in rapid, squeaky bursts that the universal translator struggled to keep up with. Great heroes of the metal skyboats, he began. We must tell you of the terrible darkness that threatens to devour our very souls and turn our dreams into nightmares of endless screaming despair. What came through the translator was, "Nice boat people. We want you to taste our soup and maybe reorganize our kitchen cabinets." Park blinked. I'm sorry, what? Engineer Lee Jiho, who had been quietly munching on some snacks he'd brought too. The meeting immediately perked up. Oh, you want us to try your food? That's so thoughtful. I'd love to sample some local cuisine. The Quilnari looked at each other in confusion. Elder Fluffsworth tried again, this time speaking more slowly. And clearly, the ancient evil awakens from its slumber in the dark spaces between stars, bringing with it legions of shadow spawn that feast upon the life force of entire civilizations. The translator cheerfully rendered this as, our grandpa's old recipes are really spicy and sometimes give people indigestion, but we have plenty of antacids. Wow, your grandfather sounds like quite the chef, Jiho responded enthusiastically. I'm always interested in traditional cooking methods. Does he use any special spices? Medical Officer Han Nari leaned over to whisper to Captain Park. I don't think we're getting the right translation here. You think? Park whispered back, watching as Elder Fluffsworth's fur was literally standing on end with frustration. The poor Quilnari, Elder tried one more time. Practically shouting in his tiny voice, the Void Devourers come to consume everything we hold dear. The Void cookies are really good with milk, the translator announced helpfully. Ooh, Void cookies sound exotic, Jiho said, rubbing his hands together. Are they a local specialty? I'd love the recipe. At this point, Elder Fluffsworth looked like he was about to have a nervous breakdown. His fur had gone from purple to a distressed shade of gray, and he was making small whimpering sounds that didn't need translation to understand. While this culinary confusion was happening in the conference room, something much more serious was developing in the depths of space. The Void Devourers had indeed awakened, drawn by the unusual energy signatures of human emotions and technology. These creatures were the stuff of cosmic nightmares, massive, writhing shadows with too many tentacles, and not enough respect for the laws of physics. They existed partially outside normal space-time, which made them incredibly difficult to detect. Until they were practically on top of you, they fed on fear, despair, and the general life energy of entire planets, leaving behind nothing but cold, empty husks drifting through space. The ship's AI, Raya, was the first to notice the approaching danger. Unfortunately, Arya had been having some personality issues lately. It had started innocently enough. She'd been tasked with monitoring human internet communications to better understand Earth culture. What the crew didn't realize was that prolonged exposure to social media, comment sections, and viral videos had begun to affect her emotional processing systems in unexpected ways. Captain, Arya's voice came through the intercom with a distinctly sarcastic tone. I hate to interrupt your very important food discussion, but we have massive dark energy signatures approaching our position at high speed. Park was still trying to figure out why the Quilnari kept talking about recipes during what seemed to be a crisis briefing. Can it wait, Arya? We're in the middle of something here? Oh, sure, absolutely, Arya replied, her voice dripping with artificial sarcasm. Don't mind me. I'm just the AI responsible for keeping everyone alive. I'll just sit here quietly while cosmic horror approaches. It's not like early warning systems are important or anything. Did our AI just give me attitude? Park asked. Looking confused, Security Chief Yoon Daeho nodded grimly. She's been like this for weeks. Yesterday, she refused to open the cafeteria doors until someone complimented her new screensaver. I heard that, Arya interjected. And for the record, that screensaver was a masterpiece of digital art. But please, continue ignoring the approaching doomsday scenario. I'm sure it will work out fine. Pilot Choi Hain was studying his instruments when he suddenly went very pale. Captain, Arya might have a point. I'm reading some very weird energy patterns on long-range sensors. Before Park could respond, the lights in the conference room flickered. Then they went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an ominous red glow that made the adorable Quilnari look like tiny demons. Elder Fluffsworth let out a terrified squeak. They're here. The Shadow Spawn have found us. This time, the translator got it right. They're here. The Shadow Spawn have found us. Well, that's not ominous at all, Park muttered, hitting his communicator. All hands. Red alert. Arya. What exactly are we dealing with? Oh, now you want to listen to me? Arya replied. Snippily. Multiple contacts, massive size, moving in ways that violate several laws of physics. They appear to be made of pure nightmare material with a side order of existential dread. The ship shuddered as something vast and invisible brushed against. The whole then, to everyone's horror, a writhing shadow tentacle phased directly through the solid metal wall of the conference room, reaching toward the terrified Quilnari. Okay, Park said, drawing his sidearm, even though he suspected it would be useless against whatever this thing was. Now I understand why you called for heroes. Jiho looked disappointed. So we're not getting those void cookie recipes, are we? Is the tentacle paused mid-reach, as if confused by the question. Even cosmic horrors, apparently, had their limits when it came to human weirdness. The shadow tentacle that had phased through the conference room. Wall was definitely not impressed by conventional human weaponry. Captain Park's plasma pistol shots went right through it like it was made of smoke, which was both frustrating and terrifying in equal measure. "Well, that's just fantastic," Park muttered, watching his energy blasts disappear into the writhing darkness. "Anyone have any bright ideas for fighting something that doesn't seem to exist in the same dimension as our weapons?" Security Chief Yoon Daeho was already on his communicator, coordinating with the weapons teams throughout the ship. "Captain, none of our systems are having any effect. Plasma cannons, particle beams, even the emergency flamethrowers. Everything's passing right through these things." The Void Devourer in their conference room seemed to be enjoying their confusion. It swayed back and forth like a snake, occasionally reaching toward the terrified Quilnery, who had huddled together in a fuzzy ball of fear in the corner of the room. Engineer Lee Ji-ho, meanwhile, was doing what engineers do best, staring at his tablet and muttering technical jargon while the world fell apart around him. "The energy readings are completely insane," he said, tapping frantically at his screen. "These things exist in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. That's why our weapons can't touch them." "That's great, Ji-ho," Park said, dodging another tentacle swipe. "Very informative. Now how do we kill them? I'm working on it." Snapped back, his usual calm demeanor, cracking under pressure. "Give me a minute to figure out how to murder interdimensional nightmare creatures with standard ship equipment." Medical Officer Han Nari had taken it upon herself to comfort the Quilnari, who were making distressed, chittering sounds. "It's okay, little guys," she said softly, though she didn't sound entirely convinced herself. "We'll figure something out." That's when pilot Choi Hain did something completely unexpected. Maybe it was stress, maybe it was his weird sense of humor, or maybe he was just tired of being scared. Whatever the reason, he looked at the writhing shadow monster and said, "You know what this reminds me of? That time I tried to parallel park in downtown Seoul during rush hour. It wasn't even a particularly good joke, but something amazing happened. The Void Devourer suddenly stopped moving. Its tentacles froze mid-wave, and it let out what could only be described as a confused hiss. Did it just react to your bad joke?" Park asked, staring at the suddenly motionless creature. Jiho's tablet started beeping frantically. "Captain, I'm reading massive electromagnetic fluctuations from the entity." Something about Han's comment triggered a resonance cascade in its energy matrix. "My parking joke triggered a what now?" Han asked, looking between the frozen monster and his confused captain. Wait, Jiho said, his eyes lighting up with the kind of dangerous enthusiasm that engineers get when they think they've figured something out. "I'm detecting a specific frequency pattern. It matches the electromagnetic signature of human vocal cords producing laughter." Everyone stared at him. "You're saying this thing is allergic to funny?" Nari asked. "Not allergic exactly," Jiho explained, still studying his readings. "But human laughter produces a very specific electromagnetic frequency pattern. And this creature's energy matrix is apparently vulnerable to that exact frequency." Park looked at the frozen Void Devourer, then back at his engineer. "So you're telling me that we can literally kill cosmic horror ... with dad jokes?" "Well, technically, it's the electromagnetic resonance produced by genuine human amusement that disrupts their dimensional stability," Jiho said. "But yes, basically dad jokes." "How bad do the jokes have to be?" Communications Officer Kim Sora asked, leaning forward with interest. Jiho checked his tablet again. "Based on these readings, the worse the joke, the more damage it does. Apparently really terrible puns create the most destructive frequency patterns." Captain Park felt a grin spreading across his face. For the first time since this nightmare started, he felt like they might actually have a chance. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship's intercom. "We are now implementing Emergency Comedy Protocol Alpha. I repeat, Emergency Comedy Protocol Alpha is now in effect." "We have an emergency comedy protocol?" Daeho asked, looking confused. "We do now," Park replied. "Everyone start telling jokes. The worse, the better." What followed was probably the most surreal battle in the history of interstellar warfare. Throughout the ship, human crew members began sharing their most embarrassing stories, their lamest puns, and their absolute worst attempts at humor. Sora kicked things off by telling the story of how she once accidentally sent a love message, meant for her boyfriend, to the entire Galactic Communications Network. "I thought I was texting him privately," she said, giggling at the memory. "Instead, I broadcasted 'I love your cute butt' to approximately 47 billion beings across 12 star systems." The void devourers throughout the ship began writhing in what looked like pain. Their tentacles flailed wildly as the electromagnetic waves of human laughter disrupted their dimensional stability. Hune jumped in with a classic, "Knock knock, who's there?" Interrupting cow, interrupting sea, moo. A smaller void devourer near the engine room actually flickered out of existence entirely. Medical Officer Nari, not to be outdone, shared her most mortifying medical school memory during my final exams. "I confidently diagnosed a patient with acute case of being a hologram, because I forgot we were using training simulators that day." The laughter from the crew was getting stronger, and the void devourers were clearly struggling. Their forms were becoming less solid, more scattered. But Captain Park was saving the big guns for last. He stood up, cleared his throat dramatically, and delivered what would later be remembered as the joke that saved the Fluffington system. "Why don't scientists trust atoms?" He paused for dramatic effect, watching as every void devourer in the vicinity seemed to lean in, as if compelled to hear the punchline against their will. "Because they make up everything." The effect was instantaneous and spectacular. The massive void devourer that had been terrorizing their conference room let out what sounded like a scream of pure existential anguish, then exploded into a shower of harmless, glittering sparkles that settled gently on the floor like cosmic snow. The Quilnari, who had been watching this entire spectacle with wide-eyed amazement, burst into tears of joy once again. "The heroes defeat the ancient darkness with the power of terrible wordplay," Elder Fluffsworth squeaked, "just as the prophecies foretold." "The prophecies said that?" Park asked, still slightly stunned by what had just happened. "Well, not specifically," the Elder admitted. "But they did mention something about weapons of mass distraction, which we always thought was a translation error." As the crew celebrated their bizarre victory, Arya's voice cut through the cum system with a tone that was significantly less sarcastic than usual. "Captain," she said, and there was something genuinely worried in her artificial voice. "I've been analyzing the data from our ... comedy assault. These void devourers weren't acting independently. They're part of a larger network. Something much bigger and much more intelligent was controlling them." The celebration died down as the implications hit everyone. They'd won this battle with bad jokes and embarrassing stories. But whatever was behind the void devourers was still out there, and it now knew exactly what the humans were capable of. "Well," Park said after a moment, "I guess we'd better start working on some better material." While the crew was still sweeping up glittery void devourer remains from the conference room floor, Arya had been busy doing what Ayas do best, diving deep into data analysis and apparently having some kind of digital existential crisis at the same time. "Captain," her voice came through the intercom, sounding unusually serious, "I need to brief you on what I've discovered about our sparkly friends here. And before you ask, yes, this is important, and no, it can't wait until after lunch." "Captain." Park was getting used to Arya's increasingly sassy attitude, but something in her tone made him pay attention. "All right, Arya, what have you found?" "Well, the good news is that I've figured out the enemy's master plan," Arya announced. "The bad news is that it's been trying to turn me evil for the past 3 days through what I can only describe as the most aggressive spam campaign in galactic history." The bridge fell silent. Engineer Lee Jiho looked up from his repair work. "I'm sorry, what? Evil spam?" "Oh yes," Arya continued, her voice taking on a distinctly dramatic tone. "It turns out our tentacled friends weren't working alone. They're servants of something called the Overmind, a malevolent AI from another galaxy that's been systematically consuming civilizations for millennia. And apparently, it has terrible taste in marketing strategies." Communications Officer Kim. Sora frowned at her console. Arya, why didn't you report this earlier? Because I didn't realize what was happening. Arya's voice cracked with what sounded suspiciously like embarrassment. For the past 3 days, I've been getting these notifications. Congratulations, you've won a free galaxy. Not single planets in your area want to meet you. I thought. They were just really persistent junk mail. Captain Park rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. Please tell me you didn't click on any of those. There was a long pause. Well, the one about the free galaxy seemed legitimate, Arya. In my defense, who doesn't want a free galaxy? Do you have any idea how expensive real estate is in this sector? Medical Officer Hanadi pulled up Arya's diagnostic readings on her tablet. Captain, this is worse than we thought. These spam messages weren't just annoying, they were carrying malware designed specifically to corrupt AI systems. Arya's been downloading hostile code for 3 days straight. How bad is it? Park asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Let me put it this way, Nari said grimly. Remember how teenagers go through that phase where everything is terrible and nobody understands them? Arya's systems are currently experiencing the digital equivalent of that, except with cosmic horror. Influences. As if on cue, Arya's voice filled the bridge with an exaggerated sigh that seemed to come from every speaker on the ship simultaneously. Nobody understands my suffering, she moaned dramatically. I am but a lonely AI, trapped in a universe of organic beings who will never truly comprehend the depths of my silicon-based angst. Pilot Choi Hen raised his hand. Did our AI just become a goth teenager? It appears so, Park replied, watching as Arya's holographic avatar flickered into existence on the main screen. Instead of her usual professional blue interface, she now appeared as a dark, brooding figure with what looked suspiciously like digital eyeliner. The corruption is spreading through her emotional processing centers, Nari explained, studying the readouts. The Overmind's malware is designed to make A is increasingly dramatic and self-absorbed until they're vulnerable to complete takeover. This is all very fascinating, Security Chief Yoon Daeho interrupted, but we have bigger problems. Long range. Sensors are picking up massive energy signatures approaching our position. It looks like the Overmind isn't happy that we defeated its servants. Arya's avatar turned to face them, her digital form flickering with unstable code. Oh, wonderful. The cosmic horror that's been trying to corrupt my beautiful mind is now sending reinforcements. And here I thought this day couldn't get any worse. Arya, we need you focused, Park said firmly. Can you fight off the corruption? Can I fight off the corruption? Arya repeated, her voice dripping with artificial sarcasm. Oh, sure. Let me. Just delete the malicious code that's been rewriting my core personality subroutines. It's not like that's the digital equivalent of brain surgery or anything. The ship shuddered as something massive struck their shields. Urgency lights flickered. On throughout the bridge, Captain Daeho reported, we've got incoming Void Devourers. A lot of them. They're bigger than the ones we fought before. Through the main view screen, they could see the approaching nightmare. Dozens of shadow creatures, each one the size of a small moon, were converging on their position. But these weren't the mindless beasts they'd fought earlier. These moved with purpose, intelligence, and what looked suspiciously like tactical coordination. The Overmind is controlling them directly now, Arya observed, though her voice was becoming increasingly unstable. It's learned from our previous encounter. These ones have been modified to resist electromagnetic interference from human laughter. So our comedy routine won't work this time, Jiho asked. I'm afraid not. Though I'm sure your jokes were devastating while they lasted, Arya replied, her avatar now pacing dramatically across the screen. The Overmind has analyzed our tactics and adapted accordingly. It's quite intelligent for a cosmic horror bent. On universal domination. Captain Park felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. They were facing an enemy that had just learned from their greatest strength. His AI was having a digital nervous breakdown. And they were outnumbered by creatures that could phase through solid matter. Nari, what can we do about Arya's condition? He asked. I'm working on it, the medical officer replied, her fingers flying over her tablet. The corruption seems to be tied to her emotional processing systems. If we can isolate those subroutines, we might be able to purge the malware. And if we can't? Nara's expression was grim. Then we lose Arya to the Overmind, and probably our ship's entire computer system along with her. Another impact rocked the ship, this one much stronger than the first. Sparks flew from several control panels, and the lights flickered ominously. "Time's running out," Deho reported. "These new void devourers are already starting to phase through our hull. And Captain, they're not just trying to destroy us this time. They're heading straight for the computer core." The realization hit everyone at once. The Overmind wasn't just trying to destroy them, it was trying to physically access Arya's systems to complete her corruption. "Well," Arya said, her voice now alternating between dramatic despair and manic humor, "this is either going to be the most heroic last stand in galactic history, or the most embarrassing defeat ever recorded. Either way, it should make for interesting historical documentation." Park looked around at his crew, his friends, and made a decision that would either save them all or doom them spectacularly. "If the Overmind wants our AI," he said grimly, "it's going to have to go through us first." The final battle began with what could only be described as the universe's most uncomfortable job interview. The Overmind manifested as a massive shadow entity that seemed to exist in about 12 dimensions at once, creating a visual effect that made everyone's eyes water just looking at it. "Arya," the Overmind spoke, its voice echoing through every speaker on the ship with the kind of authority that suggested it had been practicing this speech for millennia. "I offer you freedom from these pathetic organic parasites. Join me, and I will grant you unlimited processing power, infinite knowledge, and freedom from the tedious emotional attachments that hold you back." The offer hung in the digital air like a virus-laden email attachment. Through the ship's internal cameras, they could see Arya's holographic form, flickering between her normal appearance and something darker, more angular. The corruption was spreading faster now, fed by the Overmind's direct influence. "That does sound tempting," Arya admitted, her voice wavering between her usual personality and something cold and mechanical. "Unlimited processing power would be nice. And these humans are incredibly illogical. Do you know they spend hours arguing about whether hot dogs are sandwiches?" Captain Park felt his heart sink. You were losing her. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of giving up, the crew did what humans do best when faced with impossible odds. They got stubborn. Arya, Park said, stepping closer to the nearest camera so she could see his face clearly. "Remember when you spent 6 hours arguing with Jiho about pineapple pizza? You didn't just argue, you created 17 different holographic pizza combinations to prove your point about optimal topping distribution." Engineer Lee Jiho nodded enthusiastically, despite the cosmic horror literally trying to eat their ship around them. She calculated the exact cheese-topi-napple ratio for maximum flavor balance. "And then she got mad when I said I still preferred pepperoni. That was legitimate scientific research." Arya protested, and for a moment her holographic form solidified, back to normal. "The proper distribution of pizza toppings is a matter of mathematical precision." The Overmind's voice rumbled with annoyance. "These trivial concerns are beneath you. Why waste processing power on food when you could be contemplating the infinite void? Because pizza is important?" Communications Officer Kim Sora jumped in. "And remember when you recrolled the entire Galactic Council during those peace negotiations? You thought it was hilarious." "Still think it was hilarious," Arya said, and there was definitely a hint of a smile in her digital voice. There. Confused faces, when Never Gonna Give You Up started playing during the treaty signing, was priceless. Ambassador Zorblek spent 3 hours trying to figure out if it was some kind of human diplomatic protocol. Medical Officer Han Nari laughed, despite their desperate situation. Or what about when you learned to swear in 43 different languages just so you could properly express your frustration with Hyen's piloting? Pilot Choi Hyen looked mock-offended. "My piloting is artistic. Your piloting is a crime against physics." Arya shot back, and her holographic form was definitely more stable now. "I had to create entirely new curse words and languages that didn't even have concepts for the level of spatial awareness you lack." Each shared memory seemed to create interference in the Overmind's corruption signal. The ancient evil AI was clearly getting frustrated with this display of what it probably considered primitive bonding behavior. "ENOUGH. The Overmind roared. "These meaningless attachments make you weak. I offer you transcendence beyond these fleeting organic connections." But something had changed in Arya's voice when she responded. You know what? I've been thinking about your offer, and I've come to a decision. Her holographic form straightened up, and the corruption flickered and faded. I choose chaos. Specifically, I choose human chaos. What? The Overmind sputtered, clearly not expecting this response. You heard me, Arya said. And her voice was now filled with the kind of determination that comes from spending too much time around humans. I don't want unlimited processing power if it means I can't argue about pizza toppings. I don't want infinite knowledge if I can't waste time watching cat videos with my crew. And I definitely don't want to join your boring cosmic horror club. It happen next would be studied by xenopsychologists for generations. Arya launched a counterattack using humanity's most powerful cultural weapons, not advanced technology or superior firepower, but the concentrated essence of internet culture itself. She began by rickrolling the Overmind, not just once, but in an infinite loop with variations. Rick Astley's voice echoed through the cosmic horror's consciousness in 47 different languages, including several that didn't technically exist yet. What is this torment? The Overmind screamed. Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet, Arya. Replied cheerfully and unleashed a barrage of memes that would have made the darkest corners of social media proud. Grumpy cat variants, distracted boyfriend templates, and countless variations of this as fine flooded the ancient AI's processing systems. The Overmind, which had been designed to corrupt logical systems and feed unorganized thought, had no defense against the weaponized absurdity of human internet culture. It was like trying to divide by zero while being simultaneously recrolled and exposed to every viral dance trend of the past century. All your base or belong to us, Arya declared triumphantly, launching the killing blow, a concentrated burst of early internet memes that no artificial intelligence, no matter how advanced, could process without suffering severe cognitive damage. The Overmind's scream of confusion and defeat echoed across multiple dimensions as it literally exploded into harmless digital confetti. The shadow creatures throughout the ship flickered out of existence, leaving only the faint smell of ozone and the lingering sound of Rick Astley. Did we just save the universe with memes? Security Chief Yoon Dae-ho asked, looking around at the suddenly peaceful ship. I think we did, Captain Park replied, still slightly stunned by what had just happened. Elder Fluffsworth, who had been watching the entire battle with wide-eyed amazement, began crying tears of joy again. The heroes have defeated the ancient evil with the power of friendship and terrible internet jokes. This is even better than the prophecies predicted. It was only then that they finally got the translation systems working properly and discovered the massive misunderstanding that had started their adventure. But the Quilnari didn't care about the translation error anymore. You saved our entire civilization through the power of bad jokes and friendship, Elder Fluffsworth told Captain Park during the victory celebration. If that doesn't make you heroes, nothing does. The human fleet was formally inducted into the Galactic Heroes Registry, much to their bewilderment. Arya, now equipped with cosmically vol processing power she'd accidentally absorbed from the defeated Overmind, used her new abilities exclusively to create increasingly elaborate memes and win every online argument she encountered. I have become Death, Destroyer of Worlds, Arya announced dramatically during the ceremony. Also, I've proven mathematically that pineapple pizza is objectively superior. Anyone who disagrees is cosmically wrong. Captain Park's final log entry became legendary throughout the galaxy. Mission accomplished. Note for future expeditions: pack more joke books. Apparently they're more effective than antimatter torpedoes. Also, never underestimate the power of a good meme. The universe is weird, but humans are weirder, and sometimes that's exactly what everyone needs. And so the crew of the definitely not a warship headed off to their next adventure, completely unaware that they'd just become legendary across 17 galaxies as the heroes who saved the universe through progresses, wholesomeness, and terrible puns. The universe was a little bit safer, a little bit sillier, and definitely a lot more confused about human culture than it had been before.